episode number 79, guys. How about that? For something that started as a let's do something during COVID, 79 shows. That's pretty good, right? Pretty good.
Absolutely.
All right, and let's go live on our. Hey, everybody, this is Dr. Kevin McGovern, and today is Thursday, and we're actually doing a podcast almost on time and at the right day. It is episode number 79, and today's episode is What is Development 2022? And without further ado, I'm going to introduce you to my very handsome co-host, Mr. Mike Ferry. Michael, taketh away.
That was the very accurate Dr. Kevin McGovern of
very accurate.
Perfect Motion Sports Therapy.
Yeah, very accurate.
Yeah, especially in your judgment of apparently.
Allegedly. Everything's alleged though, you know.
Well, you say it 79 times, it's probably no longer alleged. But having said that,
hey, well, as we know, if you say things enough, whether it's true or not, it eventually
becomes true. It's like right? Howard Stern with the king of all media, right?
Yeah,
claimed himself that for years.
Shots work.
Anyway. Well, I'm not Howard Stern. I am Mike Ferry from the Farm Baseball Performance Institute. Already mentioned Kevin. We're a little out of order today, and it's because I'm a little disheveled because we're back to having a third person here.
Yeah, who is this guy?
This is Kevin. Would you like to take it away and introduce Ben, our new producer?
I will. So, well, not only he was actually a guest. So
he was.
I'd like everyone to be introduced to Ben Bills, who is a Pennsylvania native, has now transplanted himself to Massachusetts. Not that he couldn't.
By way of Texas.
Yeah, by way of Texas. Ben was a guest about a year and a half ago on the show. Ben and I first met because a friend of mine and his instructor, Ben, was told that he needed Tommy John surgery to continue his career. He had gone to one of these velocity places and left there with, well, no velocity because he had essentially a pretty good strain or tear, depending on what MRI you looked up as UCL. And we met for about 20 hours and probably actually it's got to be right around the end of it's probably around this. Well, it was in August, right? So it was in August. He hadn't thrown his whole high school season, and I basically taught him how to throw without using his elbow to do that. And that turned into, which I'm proud of, and he's got to be extremely proud of, an unbelievable college career that included not just over 200 hits, because he actually hit too, but a perfect game and a no-hitter as a pitcher. And I don't care what level you're at, that's pretty, even if you're in backyard wiffle ball, that's pretty good. And to play for that long and still be healthy is pretty good. So without further ado, I'd like you to, and he's a good kid too, and he comes from a very good family. So without further ado, I'd like you to introduce us, the whole place here, to Ben Bills. Ben!
Maybe in 78 more episodes, I get the handsome edition too. But
well, you're too. You can't be in the handsome edition. One, you're young, so we hate you. Two, you have a lot of hair. We hate you for that too. And we just hate you. So we're just right, Mike. I mean, we can't call you handsome. That goes without saying. Like, we're old. We need to be told that we're handsome.
Yeah,
at least once in a while.
So yeah, not only did I play 4 years of college baseball, also hundreds of summer league games from the Great Lakes to Miami and the South Florida Collegiate League and all that jazz. So yeah, I played since my senior year. Took 5 months off of throwing from a torn UCL to playing well over probably 800 games, surgery-free, pain-free, you know.
Bravo, my friend.
Yep, it was awesome. It was great.
Well, I think the elbow is critical if you're going to do 200 running guns, pull downs, heavy ball, weighted ball throws.
Yeah, so the velocity camp I was with, not to be named, but
definitely don't. We don't want to do that.
We'll just say it was in Conroe, Texas. So basically we got there, very little warm up, and it was just we're running and gunning, and we're throwing balls as hard as we can.
And that was there was no like we might as well just get into it. There's no like we're gonna do these really cool strengthening exercises first because we found that they increase this. None of that stuff. It was just run and gun.
The one thing we did do was a lot of ankle mobility for whatever that's worth. If
No, that is ankle mobility is worth, as Mike can attest to. Anytime someone comes in for me I'm always checking
ankle
feet mobility for sure. 100%. So that's good.
So ankle mobility was big down there. Other than that, there was like a small J band routine, and then we just got into it. We're trying to throw curveballs as hard as we can down there.
So I think
well,
they were one of them and how long was this? Because I believe this is one of the places that, like, I don't know if they use the word guaranteed, but they tell you they're going to add like X amount of miles per hour to your fastball.
Oh, man. It's they say, hey, come here, we'll get you 3 to 4 miles per hour in 3 days.
Wow.
Yeah. So.
And how much?
How much did it cost?
Yeah.
Let's see. This was 2017. $2,400.
Jesus.
For 3 days.
For 3 days, $2,400.
Wow.
It's amazing.
They did give me a body blade to take home, but I couldn't get it on the plane, so it's some TSA snagged it, so it was a waste of money too.
It's funny. Mike is gracious to send some players to me. One player went to a similar camp, and I knew he paid at least that. And his playbook when he came back of exercises. First of all, he was unable to even do meaning he wasn't at a level to be able to do some of the high level exercises, but I would say 75% of the exercises that he was given, I would do the exact opposite. Right? So if it was to push, no, he should be pulling here. And he paid a fortune. So now he comes to see me and I have him throw a bullpen inside completely pain free, and they balked at the cost. I don't, but he had to have laid that, and guess what? It was less than $2,400 so I was charging, and they balked at it, and the kid's still in limbo.
That's marketing. That's marketing right there, right? And by the way, why we have the show, because you see it all the time. I've seen one that even guaranteed like you'll be throwing 90 after however much time. I don't remember how much.
Oh yeah, that person's in New Jersey, I think, right?
Yeah, yes. I believe so. Yeah.
Yes.
So the place I was at was definitely a lot of marketing. They were talking about, notable guys that they had was, Justin Verlander, Noah Syndergaard, but what do those two guys have in common after the past years?
Well, they're both hurt, but there's no way that Verlander went to that place. No way.
Hey, it's what I was told.
I know. Right. Well, we also have another one we talk about where he says that, he's, because of his swing, Aaron Judge has got 56 home runs now, right?
Yeah. Even though
which
Aaron
of course is not, but we can get into that.
No.
But we do have another debate though. We got this top of the order here. We have this triangular debate.
Yeah.
Remember, a 3-legged table never rocks. Think about that for a second.
Well, this started too, by the way. This is something we had yesterday. I wanted to introduce it to everybody because I'd like to get some more opinions on this. So came up, topic was MVP of the 2022 season. And the two that came up were Aaron Judge, fairly obvious one, and Ohtani. Now our new producer here, our new guest, Ben, made a pretty strong argument about Ohtani. I'd like for you to tell that, and then I'd like
it's very strong.
Do my best at dismantling it the best I can.
And no matter what I say, you'll probably feel like as if you win the argument anyway. So,
whoa, woo, big right hand.
That's probably true.
Well, okay, so just starting off, I was a two-way in college, so I have great respect for Ohtani because I realize how hard it is to do both, and not only do both, you can be potentially a top 10 player at both positions in the MLB has got to be extremely difficult. So I know one of Mike's arguments here was you got to compare Ohtani because he's the number one in the Angels rotation to Garrett Cole, who's number one in the Yankees rotation. So, I mean, I have the numbers here between the two. Ohtani's 11-8 and Cole is 10-7. ERA is 2.58 compared to 3.28. 181 strikeouts versus 204 strikeouts. And then you got
204 Cole.
204 for Garrett Cole.
And Cole's got the higher year. Cole's got the higher year. Okay.
Correct.
And then WHIP 1.04 against 1.01. It's pretty comparable numbers for
Very.
Yeah. So now if Garrett
Cole isn't a most valuable.
No, he's not. But if Garrett,
would you say Garrett Cole's the most valuable pitcher on his team?
Are you asking me?
Yeah, well, I mean, because this is going to get into the thing about this is the whole argument about is he the most valuable pitcher on the Yankees? I'd argue as a Yankee fan, nowhere close.
Well, he's definitely getting paid as if he should be.
Well, that goes without saying. But I think Nestor Cortez or even the closer there was probably.
Well, I would think for longevity too. Who do you think's going to have a better career in a Yankees uniform, Garrett Cole or Nestor? You know what I mean?
Well, I think the jury might still be on that too, right? But
I don't know. I can't predict, but I do know that with those comparable numbers, if Garrett Cole were to step up to the plate and hit 270 with 35 bombs and over 80 RBIs, I would definitely put him in the contest for most valuable player in the league.
All right. So my next question to both of you guys, because I still don't really understand it. I think there's a stat that measures this, right? Is that the WAR stat?
The WAR is so overly used, it's not even funny.
But is that what's supposed because my next question was if we take Garrett Cole out and we take Ohtani out as pitcher, right? Like what is that what WAR measures? I'm assuming or no? Like the replacement, right? Or what?
Yeah, it's above the average replacement player. So I believe it's a combined stat, but that's the thing is I don't think anyone really has a full grasp of it because it's a fluid stat. Right.
It's constantly moving, right?
It's constantly moving. The average is constantly moving. So it's just kind of I don't think I think it's wildly overused and wildly also misunderstood. But I think you can sort of use it as a guy to play that game. What I was going to say is you look at Garrett Cole, as Ben said, right? Garrett Cole and Ohtani have very, very similar numbers. I mean, they're very similar. So there's
that's eerily
11, 8, 10, 7, right? And so Cole has him on strikeouts, and Ohtani has him on ERA by it's less than a run, but neither of them are really front line numbers, right? And so look at a guy like Verlander, right, who's now hurt, but has 16 wins, and I think his ERA
he got hurt too. No, his arm, is it? Was it his arm again?
He's coming back from TJ, isn't
he? Yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't hear that he was hurt. Oh, okay.
Yeah. Anyway, and his ERA is under 2. I don't know exactly what it is, but it's like 1.8 something the last time I looked. And so this is sort of my point. Ohtani's still more of a novelty. And what started this whole argument was like me going bonkers on them comparing Ohtani to Babe Ruth. It drives me crazy just because Babe Ruth was a pitcher and then became an amazing. First of all, he almost single-handedly won a World Series as a pitcher.
He was a very good pitcher.
Single-handedly won World Series as a hitter. And it's like you can't make the comparison. He had home runs that led all teams in Major League Baseball. He had more home runs than teams in Major League Baseball. So that comparison is just garbage. And I think, again, if Ohtani was putting up like Verlander numbers or, and he's like, one of the top 3 guys in the league and is doing what he's doing hitting, which again, also isn't real front line. I mean, he's batting 270. Yeah. 270. I mean, yeah, like that's good. It's not great, So neither are great. So I don't know how. I don't think two even very goods, even if you make it very good, I don't think two very goods become an MVP. But one great is an MVP. That's sort of my argument.
Well, Judge is Judge still hitting above three? I mean, he's a
I
tick
think
or
he's-
two away from 300, which is,
He's
I mean,
303 now.
which is to say someone today is hitting 300. That's a pretty damn good accomplishment in itself. Because I think what's the average, the league batting average, like 215, 220. It's terrible. And I always use there's been times when people have won on real, like, Mike Trout has won a bunch of MVPs on a team that's just deplorable, right? So if we take Mike Trout, if we take Mike Trout off the Angels, do they still suck? Yes, they still suck. So if we take Ohtani away from the Angels this year, they still suck. You take Aaron Judge off the New York Yankees, and the New York Yankees are absolutely in third place. Absolutely. He has probably been directly responsible for 10, 12, 15 direct wins. That was like his game-winning hit, his game-winning RBI, whatever. And that to me is valuable. I mean, I think we have the Silver Slugger for hitting at the position, and obviously we have the Cy Young for the best pitcher. But as far as value and my bias of teams aside, I mean, dude, the Yankees would be horrific right now without Aaron Judge, right?
Let me ask you this: who's the best player on the Yankees?
Aaron Judge.
Is there anyone who's close?
Right now, no. He's
Right.
got a back issue from carrying 8,000 pounds of Yankees on his back.
Right. And so when you look at Ohtani, is Ohtani the best player on his team? You'd have, I don't know what the percentage is, but you have a lot of people saying that he's not, that Trump's the best player.
I'd say he's the most talented player on his team. I'd say he's the best all-around player on his team. But if you were to compare Trout and Ohtani when it comes to hitting, I'm taking Trout for hitting, but it's the sole fact that Ohtani is also a top 15, top 10 pitcher in the league as well.
Okay.
Is he top 15?
Yeah, he's top 15.
You could say that Ozzie Smith was the most talented player in baseball for his entire career. I don't think he had one MVP.
No.
Right? I mean, so
you're not going to like me saying this, but Ozzie Smith is way past my pay grade, way older than me.
That's okay.
All right, so
hey, we already talked about Babe Ruth.
All right, so let's look at just across the league now, right, guys? So by far, Aaron Judge is blowing away the league in offensive numbers, right? Home runs, RBIs. I don't know where he is. He's got to be in the top 10 in average somewhere at 302. I mean, Kyle Schwarber's next, right? Isn't he like 30 some? I mean, he's like
he's 20 behind.
20 behind.
Yeah.
So looked it up yesterday. Wasn't Ohtani number 2 in the American League in home runs?
Yes, but by 20 home runs.
By 20 home runs.
He has around the same as Schwarber.
Okay.
Like give or take.
So as a hitter, Ohtani's not even close to Judge, right? It's not even close, right? If it's just hitting, it's not close.
I'd agree. Now, Ben made a good point, right? Aaron Judge is obviously in a better lineup, right? So he's got to see more pitches than Ohtani. Right?
I guess.
He is. He's
it kind of backs up your point. If you take Judge out, the Yankees are in a better lineup than the Angels because the Angels are notorious. They notoriously suck.
Mm-hmm.
So my point was, as a manager, I would like to throw more pitches to Judge and let him hit solo home runs as opposed to pitching around, letting him get on base, and with the potential of the next 9 or 8 guys in the lineup being able to hit a 2-run shot or a 3-run shot.
Yep, and he's hit a lot of solo home runs.
And maybe you do when he's up with nobody on, right?
But then I also take RBIs out of the equation for both because you cannot control who's on base because one team definitely has a higher on base percentage than the other. But what I would count is what is your batting average with runners in scoring position.
Yes, that's it. That's a huge stat. That's one of the most underrated.
Do we have that stat?
So, but just to the point of Judge's leading MLB and RBIs. So it just as a point to make, because it's not like he's coming up and they're throwing to him so he hits solo home runs. I mean, there's people on base when he gets up there. But again, that's because he's in a better lineup. And so
It's the
and that's it's a point for you because they have to pitch to him
It's the Trey
more
Mancini
often.
effect. Trey Mancini gets traded out of Baltimore to Houston. Their lineup's better. He gets put in. He's instantly starts raking because they have to throw to him because the next 3 guys on deck are going to smash the ball over the fence too.
So this is before you too, but I call that the Scott Brocious principle.
You
You
love
know,
it.
guy
He
was like a
loves it. He
230
loves
hitter.
He loves the Brocious. He loves it.
230 hitter with the A's, goes to the Yankees, and he's like a playoff MVP. It was ridiculous.
Loves it. He
Incredible.
hates it.
Yeah. But
It's it's definitely. I mean, obviously, Ohtani is like a
So
just unbelievable thing. Player we'll never ever see. Who knows, right? He's a
You know,
revolutionary player.
I'm not worried about Otani's longevity because how long he can keep this going for as two-way player, it's hard to say. But for right now, you're saying Judge is leading the league in home runs, and yeah, it's not close. But if Otani's number 2, and then everyone else is right there, if you were to take Judge out, Ohtani would still be the top of the leaderboard.
That was
But
part of mine.
for
yeah,
everyone else, like Otani's leading everyone else just besides Judge in the offensive category. Now you have him, let him on the mound. He's got 11 wins. He's got a 2.58 ERA. He's going to end with over 200 strikeouts, which is probably equivalent to how many strikeouts Judge will end with too.
right. But that's kind of like if the queen had testicles, she'd be a king,
Well,
right? Because
you can,
But does she identify as a king?
well, that's another topic for another day.
Okay.
right, like Phil Mickelson, right? I mean, you take Tiger away, Phil Mickelson's
It's the
you know,
greatest golfer. Yeah. Right.
the
100%.
greatest golfer of the generation.
So if you're going into a playoff atmosphere, which if the Yankees didn't start off so hot, I'm not sure that they would be going into a playoff atmosphere.
Nope.
Probably not.
Who are you taking on your team? Are you taking Judge? Are you taking Ohtani? My argument is I'm probably going to take Ohtani because it enables me to free up another roster spot for someone who can come in too, because he can perform at an all-star level at both. I mean, he's the only player to start an all-star game and bat leadoff in that all-star game.
Mhm.
Now, before we answer that question, let's say we've made a rule that Ohtani can, in the playoffs, can only play one position.
Is that like a real rule, or is that
No, it's just we're trying to. It's hard to compare Judge because he's only so
is that a Kevin McGovern?
Kevin McGovern hypothetical. It's a little curve backdoor. So if we said Commissioner Mike Ferry has said Ohtani can play one position in the playoffs, and or he can play one position during the league championships, or during the division series, and he can change again. What position does he play?
Without question.
So you say pitching.
Without question.
Ben, what do you say?
I'm saying pitcher. He's going to go as a pitcher.
All right. So then he is not comparable to Judge, right?
I'll say this. I think, and this is where I kind of make it like as.
I agree with you. It's a pitcher.
I would just say a pitcher simply because the Angels don't have another guy on the mound that I could name off the top of my head is how bad they are.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And I'll say this, Kevin, you said, we'll never see it again. I disagree. I think this is what's coming with Major League Baseball. Look you have position players pitching almost every game now in Major League Baseball. Not every game, but every day
right.
There will be a game where a position player pitched. You got guys like Hunter Green, right? Who was originally viewed as a two-way player, right? But he went to an organization. They didn't believe in it. They weren't going to do it, but he probably could. I mean, it's really more a philosophy that's opening up is really what it is. Right. I mean, where
Ohtani certainly paved the way that it can absolutely be done.
So my ending argument would be if you have a guy who's an all-star at everything in the game,
Yep.
is that not more valuable than a guy who is an all-star at just one-sided game?
well, I don't.
Ooh,
I don't.
Nice. I like that.
Right. But I think the better argument is, would you guy who takes an all-star at everything in the game versus an MVP in only, by doing one thing? Because Judge is more than just an all-star. I mean, he's the best player in baseball right now. At least the best batter, best position player.
Best batter, because we're kind of
Position player. Yeah.
Yeah, and
So he's the
running a couple-
absolute best.
He's the best hitter in baseball right now.
And this is, coming from someone wearing a Jim Ed Rice Red Sox jersey.
Yeah, it pains you to say that.
It pains me to say that. And I'm not a fan of him. But anyway, but as a segue, right? Like, I think this is a trend coming. I think, and as kids, they're developing better, they're getting stronger, right? They're obviously getting stronger and faster. I mean, we can't argue that. I think you're going to see more of it. Less kids are transitioning to like only, pitch only, to only be a pitcher at a certain age, or, sort of pigeonhole themselves into one position at a younger, like that was happening just like 5-6 years ago. I mean, we had kids that like were 14 years old and decided, I'm going to be a pitcher. I only want to pitch going forward, and who had the ability to play other positions longer. I think you're seeing less of that, and maybe that's because of Tani, but I'd make the argument that was happening before he came in, and that he was a result of that versus the other way around. Which sort of leads to the question, right? What's something we want to talk about? Is like, what's real development? What should
that was my next segue question is, how does an Ohtani get through the American system? Who's gonna
good question.
Scout him for college, right? Is he gonna make it? Is Ohtani gonna make a Division I program playing two positions like that?
He'd maybe make a college, but
meaning like, is he gonna no, he can't play two. He's only gonna play you'd have to change someone's mindset on that, right? That's just not like
that's so when I got to college, I was only strictly looking at colleges that would take me as a two-way player, and instantly people were writing me off because it's like, health, you can't do it. And a lot of these guys are older guys. These college coaches are older, and they're, hey, you can't do it, blah, 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 blah. So I ended up going to Nyack College, Division II, my first year, where my freshman year I pitched 40 some innings, whatever. And then when I transferred, dude, like, you don't see any, even in Texas, like, very rare in our conference where there's a guy that could actually do both, like,
effectively.
They just wouldn't let him. And I think a lot of how I grew up developing is I was never the best player at any position I played. So I played all of the positions. I tried to be an average player at all the positions, and then I could pitch. You know what I mean? So I think when you develop a kid, it's you can't instantly write off a guy that, if he wants to be a PO, it's like, no, you're gonna play a position because it's how you get better, and you can learn to play every single position almost.
Absolutely. And not to mention that the hardest thing to really predict is how hard a kid's going to throw when they're 18 years old. It's so hard. You can more accurately predict what their bat speed, exit velocity, what their swing is going to look like, their barrels. You can more accurately predict all those things than velocity, I think.
Baseball is, I think, the one sport where you can wake up and it'll just one day it'll click and you can just start rolling. You know what I mean? Like, you practice to get to that point, but one day it's going to click and you rock with it.
Yeah.
What did you end up topping out at?
Me, I never threw any harder than 92.
But you threw.
I mean, I threw
without a scar.
Without a scar, yeah. I threw without a scar. I threw so let's see here. 40. You got a calculator on you? I got one. 45 innings my freshman year, 95 innings my sophomore year, 101 innings senior year or junior year, and 73 innings senior year. 314 innings just in college. And then I also first base, third base, second base.
And that's all throwing, right? Everyone's like, oh, he plays. I'm like, yeah, dude. Well, how many? That's at least 10 to 12 throws between innings, right? Ground balls and this and that and everything else. And you caught.
Yeah,
correct?
My senior year, I actually picked up catching and I caught in my senior year. So
a lot of miles on that arm, brother. That's good.
Yeah. And some people can do it. And we're talking about throwing mechanics. And of course, we almost like every other show, we're talking about that. that's how you can determine whether somebody can actually handle that workload or not, right? And if they're not adding stress to their arm, etc. But what's we're seeing for like the youth players is, and this is where it's sort of it may be debatable. I think it's not, but you have a lot of kids, and it's like we talked about last episode, a lot of parents who, their kid has to pitch, they have to play shortstop, they have to catch, they have to this, they have to that, right? And it's they want this, like, this Ohtani, this all-star player who's just can play everywhere, and the way that they're going to get better at that is through repetition, right? And so I had actually had a parent ask me, actually more say to me, in a way, look, he's going to get X amount of reps. He really needs to get all these reps, reps. You're talking about repetitions. And, I had to tell him, like, look, I'd caution you against, and this kid's like, 11 years old, 10, 11 years old. And I'm like, I'd caution you against those repetitions, because repetitions can have a very positive effect. They can also have a very negative effect, right? Because practice makes what, Kevin?
Permanent.
That's right. Right. So practice makes permanent. That's so important to understand in baseball, specifically in baseball, because
not perfect.
Right.
Permanent.
The only proactive thing the only proactive position in baseball is pitching. That's it. You're in the field. You don't get to determine when the ball's hit to you, where it's going to go, etc. You're hitting. You don't get to tell when the pitcher's going to throw, what he's going to throw. So what's that mean? It means everything you rely upon in baseball is muscle memory, and you have to develop that. And development takes a long time. It's a journey. And so the idea that reps are what a kid needs in baseball, maybe if the kid's there, if you're there and you've worked, you put in the hours, and you've developed the right muscle memory, and you move properly, absolutely rep it out from there. But I mean, I've seen fielders go from like decent fielders to poor fielders because they just went out every day and had someone hit ground ball after ground ball. And they fell into a bad habit, and now they're fielding under their chin, and it's not sustainable. Hitting, I'll say the last thing, like, one of the best pieces of advice you can ever give a kid when it comes to hitting is, if they're hitting, because a lot of kids go off, they hit off the tee on their own, they hit in their backyard, dad throws them front toss. The best thing you could tell them is to take no more than 10 swings at a time off the tee. Right? I mean, because if you take an endless number of swings until you get tired, there's no way that you're focusing on what you should be focusing on while you're hitting off the tee. The tee is designed so you can take a reactive skill like hitting, make it proactive, and focus on how you're moving. And if you're just up there taking hack after hack, chances are you're developing like bad habits, really bad habits.
All right. Well, that's a little segue into our topic today, which is, again, we're going to go back to what is development 2022.
Yeah.
Mike, you just finished tryouts. You have just hired young Ben here, who has finished a college career, and I hate to say it, but he's in a completely different generation than you and I.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe what that development is, like this word everyone throws it out there,
Yeah,
talks about it. I know you were one of the first people around to offer and include a strength and conditioning program into your travel ball program that was not an add-on, it was actually an included plan.
right.
Now everyone has copied that. But the numbers are not bearing out what's happening, right? We've got, at least on my end, significantly more injuries than ever that are on a meteoric rise. We have the amount of pitchers in baseball who are poopy, right? We'll never see pitchers like Greg Maddux or Roger Clemens or Nolan Ryan. We just won't see those numbers, right? We're not going to see complete games. We're not going to see, even now I've heard the best is quality start is being, people are want that to be lowered and included in their fantasy baseball, because wins is no longer something that, like, so the fantasy now team is directing what stats, because wins are no longer you just don't win games anymore, right? It goes to the bullpen or whatever. So the D word doesn't seem to be developing players, Michael, that like when you and I grow up, like, you just mentioned the Ozzie Smiths, the Don Mattingly's, the guys that can play and hit and pitch. So what say you guys? What's happening with this D word?
I'll tell you right off the bat. So the reason why you're seeing more kids injured, okay,
Mhm.
is because the idea now, what's happening now, is more games, less development, and less practice.
More
Right?
games. Okay.
I mean, do you have kids out there playing on 4 or 5 teams? They're playing from the very beginning of spring, the first day of April, all the way into midway into August. Some of these like Lou Tompkins leagues and like Cal Ripkins or whatever, and some of the Babe Ruth leagues, they go well into August, like deep in August, right? Like past the midway point. And it's all about games. I mean, you get kids out there playing 85 to 95 games at 13 years old. Like
Really?
it's not at all uncommon. It's not even.
Dude, when I was growing up, I played for my town team.
Wow.
I played for my town team and my select team, and then I was a guest player on 4 different teams. So
Yeah.
You were a guest
Guest
player.
so
I've never heard that before. What does that mean?
Oh, that's common.
basically,
Yeah?
like, hey, we need a fill-in, or you don't have to pay, just come play with us. for the
Extra
week.
arms for a tournament or something.
Okay.
So, I mean,
Okay.
at like 16 years old, there were times I was playing over 100 games in the summer.
Yeah.
Really?
Yep. And
100
so
games in the summer.
Yeah, I mean, we would play 25 town games. I had 8 tournaments with just my team, and then if I'm guest playing on 4 other teams, yeah, I mean, it was a lot.
Wow.
and I think the big difference is, Kevin, so when we were growing up, right, we didn't even have the opportunity to play that many games. Not even close.
No, there was nothing. There was nothing like what's happened when we
No.
grew up. No way. Yeah.
But we still wanted to play, so we'd go out. And now, while it wasn't official training, if you're just playing with your buddies, you go, "Oh, I saw Jim Rice do that. Let me try this, right? Let me
Mhm.
try this." And you actually, you're training yourself, like you're learning, you're trying to mimic big leaguers, you're trying different things. Like you're training, right? It was like,
Mhm.
basically unsupervised, unassisted training. So now you have the opportunity, right, to like, and the way that we believe it is like, no, especially when you're 10, 11, 12, 13, we don't care about if you raise a trophy at 13. Who cares? Would you rather raise a trophy at 13, or would you rather raise a high school state championship trophy over your head, or a collegiate regional championship over your head? Right? I mean, that's everyone that plays this game that wants to play at a higher level. We all want to compete, but we all want to play at a higher level. That's the whole point. That's the whole goal. And so there is a pathway to get there, and just we've lost our focus on what that is. And like, it's the game thing is crazy. I mean, we have parents all the time during the season, and they say, "Hey, what are your plans this weekend for him?" Just want to know, because you're the priority, but he's playing on this team and this team, and they're going to want him to X, Y, or Z. You get it all the time,
Or
all
you
the
get,
time.
or you get the, hey, if my kid's not pitching for you guys this weekend, I'll let him go pitch for the other week. For the
That's
other
right.
It's like,
Yeah.
well,
Like,
he's
no.
not pitching for a reason for us, because
Right.
we care about your kid. We're not,
So is
Right.
that?
Let them rest.
yeah.
And I know, Michael, you have a curriculum.
Mhm.
Okay, it's at the farm of we're going to take little Johnny at this age to this age to this age, because that's in order to develop it should be something should be written down and have goals and metrics, and there's plenty of metrics, I guess, but I mean goals of where they should be.
Yep.
But when you're
Absolutely.
playing on, let's just call it, let's just say the average kid is playing on 3 teams, right? Is that probably an average, you'd think?
Probably, yeah. It's about right.
Who's the point person, right? Who's the top of the triangle? Like, who are we listening to as far as the development, right? Because again, this goes back to reps, right? We played 30 games, but if we still got that hitch in our swing, or we're still casting our wrist, or we're still drifting forward on the mound, who's saying, no, that's not right, we need to do it this way? I mean,
That's a great question.
is the amount of these teams, like someone could have development, right? If we looked at a triangle, top team A has the good development, but he's also playing on team B and team C, and team B and team C are not really measuring or correcting him or doing whatever, or have a different philosophy than Team A or Team C, then I mean it's a mess.
Well,
right?
yeah, you don't run into the philosophy thing much because the other teams they're playing for are town run. But to answer your
Okay.
first question, who's
So
the
no
point
one's
person?
doing 2 travel teams, is it?
No,
But you've
not,
told
not
me
here,
about,
not running.
but you've told me about that elite teams, right? These like teams that are just like super teams that do tournaments.
Yes.
Like, okay, would someone be doing that?
Well, those that's at like 17, 18. It's a little bit
Gotcha.
different.
Okay.
But to answer your first question, like who's the point person, right? It's dad or mom, right? And that's where it's an issue because, while they mean well, they don't know what development is really like. And I can tell you one of the best ones I get, and I'm sure you've run into this, Ben, is hey, is it okay if so-and-so misses practice tonight? He's not just missing practice. He's still going to be playing baseball. He has a game. And so he's still be getting his reps, right? And they really believe that even in a program like mine, where we train intensively in the winter, that, well, we did all the winter training. Now it's like he wants to play games. Like he's got to play games. Got to play games. No, I can't tell you how much time it takes for me to undo so many bad habits after a season. We get a kid to a point where he enters the spring and like, wow, he's here, right? If we ranked his swing from 1 to 10, let's say it's a 7 after the season, because he's playing game to game, he's not coming to training, he's not coming to practices, he's not doing lessons, whatever, he's going to fall down to like a 4, wherever he began. And you gotta, now it'll come back quicker so you can progress, but you still got to spend 2 months just getting back to where you left him in the spring.
Yeah, I mean, there's a reason why
That's a good point.
when you get into the cage, you don't automatically go to live ABs. You go T work,
Right.
front toss, some batting practice, maybe a few drills. Then, at the end of the winter program, we're getting into live ABs. It's not like, hey,
Exactly.
we're missing practice, but he's still going to get in-game reps. Well, it's like, well, his in-game reps for my team suck, so they're not going to get better on another team.
Right.
If you come to practice, we can fix it. And if, say we get your movement patterns correctly and your swing is flawless, then it's like, if he wants to go hit for another team and he's keeping that same pattern, I have no issue. But if he sucks on my team, he's not going to just flip a switch and magically be better on the other team. It's just not, that's not how it works.
No. And that's the thing. They're facing, like, they'll go, got a 14 or a 15 year old playing Babe Ruth, right? Like almost 50% of Babe Ruth are 13-year-olds. There's more 13s. It's 13, 14, 15. There's more 13-year-olds than any other age group, right? And it's because that's exciting to them. They get to play on the big diamond. They're playing against older kids. A lot of kids, they get too good at 14, and especially at 15 will bow out. But you have ones that will still play. And so they go and dominate these leagues, right? And so they want to do it. And especially mom or dad wants them to do it because they get to see little Johnny go out and dominate. And it's like, that's not doing you any good. It might feel good in the moment, but if you want to dominate against other people who can dominate, you need to be training. You need to constantly train. Not saying like we have to play games, of course, but like we got to be sensible about it. Like going out and playing all these games, playing on all these teams. I can't give you one instance where that's actually helped a player. Not once.
Yeah.
No. Like conversely, I'll tell you, I've had kids that could not play in those other teams for whatever reason, like their parents' vacation runs into their other team's schedule and they won't allow anyone, right? That can't be there for every game. The kids have stayed and have trained, those kids excel. It's a no-brainer.
I also get worried about kids like that, where it's like, hey, at 10 to 14 years old, he's playing 100 games a summer. By the time he's 16 or 17, he might hate playing and he might not even want to play.
Absolutely. Becomes a chore.
It's to the point. It's like, hey, you're not training and you're playing 100 games and you're doing really bad. Why would you want to keep going?
Right.
Let's train and play on this team, and we'll train you. So by the time you're 16, you're really good and you love it because you're good, not you're burnt out from being so bad because you never had the proper training.
And that's what happens to most kids, right? And I know.
Yeah, you get to college, and some of my college teammates were not good, or they're on roster fillers,
right?
And it's like they're not good, so they don't want to be there,
right?
Because they never had the proper training, and they grew up thinking, if I pitched 100 innings this summer, I'm going to get really good, and it just never happened. So then they get like, I don't even want to play anymore,
Or worse, they're playing, in these town leagues where, they're facing 68 to 72-mile-an-hour fastballs every day, and they're crushing it. And then they face real pitching, and they're going, I can't handle it. It's not that you can't, like, you should be able to handle it. You've developed yourself the wrong way. You've actually made yourself really good at hitting mediocre pitching.
Yeah, I mean, a kid's mind is his worst enemy when it comes to say you convince himself he's not good, so he then hates it. Whereas it's really, you can look at the parents and be like, well, you're signing your kid up to play against trash pitching and trash hitting, so it's like, yes, he's really good. So then he gets to high school and everyone's like, quote unquote, caught up with him, and he's not good and he hates it.
Yep, no, absolutely. We see it a lot. Or kids have struggling, instead of develop working them on their training and getting better at that level, they just go play for another team where they can, their skills will allow them to be good enough as it is, right? And that's becomes the issue. Kevin, you wouldn't believe how many kids, and this is what I think I'm the most proud of, that separates us, is our kids at 16, 17, even the kids that were the lower end roster players, are looking for options to play in college. And a lot of the like our competitors and teams to play against, like if they have teams at that age, it's like they're fillers. They're all fillers. If they do it just to have that age group, and the teams just are not good. And then you hear stories about, I remember this kid that my players used to talk about, playing in their town, was really good, play for another program. Hey, what's up with him? Oh, he doesn't play baseball anymore. No, well, he plays school. He's playing for school, but he's on JV. He's happy with it. He just wants to play a couple of years in high school and be done with it. And that's the worst thing that happened, is you take a kid who's so passionate about something, wants to play at the highest level. There is a path to get on, and no one ever walks them onto that path.
It is. You see it everywhere, because I had a kid growing up, and it's like, this kid, like, you bring his name up when you talk about like baseball back in like 15, like, he's like, dude, that kid was like, you would have thought he was getting drafted. And then you're like, oh, where'd he go? He actually didn't play college because everyone caught up to him because there was no actual development there.
Yep. See it all the time. Especially even with the 12-year-olds, you have these kids that are just like, they're 5'7" at 12 years old. Their swing, their trunk doesn't move. They're all arm, but minus 13 bat, 55-mile-an-hour fastball or less. That's going over the fence. Kid hits 30 home. I can't tell you how many kids I've known that had 30 plus home runs in Little League that are out of baseball by 15. And it's harder for those kids too, because those kids, dad, mom, and this kid, they don't think they need development. What do I need to get? What are you talking about? I dominate this sport. That's what they think. They don't understand how the math works as the velocity goes up and everything.
I did have a buddy growing up who threw. His dad made him throw. He was better than everyone else. His dad made him throw 200 pitches on a Saturday and 200 pitches on a Sunday for like 4 years of growing up. And by the time he was a freshman, his rotator cuffs jacked up.
Yeah.
Quit baseball.
They're gonna say his arm fell off.
Yeah.
Ridiculous.
All right. So getting into my lane of this thing, we can't have, as far as I'm concerned, we can't have the D word without the M word first. So we can't have development without movement, right? So you guys can be teaching whatever skills that you want, but if the kid can't move correctly, right? And we've incorporated strength and conditioning, and where I think development is missing is you can strap a building that's shaking, right? We can put some supportive columns in there, but it's still crumbling, right? So I'm seeing a tremendous amount of injuries to parts of the body that shouldn't get injured, backs, hips, from lifting or for doing this. And most of it is because these kids can't walk and chew gum at the same time, can't stand on one foot, have no balance. And I just look at, like, Mike, when, again, I keep saying this and it kills me, when you and I were growing up, I mean, I could pretty much emulate. I mean, how many batting stances could you emulate, right? Like how many pitches can you emulate? And I know that sounds kind of like, funny, but being able to duplicate a movement, to duplicate Mickey Rivers' crazy batting stance or Reggie Jackson's home run or Ryan Guidry's pitching or Carlton Fisk or Yaz, right? That's that's teaching you how to move, right? You're not moving in your movement pattern, you're moving in someone else's movement pattern. That's teaching you to move better.
Yeah.
I don't see that now. And I mean, I just see a lot of kids who are really uncoordinated. And now we're telling them, let's grab this heavy bar and let's do some deadlifts. And then I see injury.
Well, you had a bunch of good points right there.
I know, I was writing them down while you guys were talking.
Yeah. You had a bunch of good points. So a couple of things, just to go from the last thing first, you wouldn't be amazed at how many kids don't watch baseball. They don't watch baseball. Now,
That's another point.
if you're watching David Ortiz, okay, and you're emulating his stance and his load phase, you're squatting without maybe even knowing what a squat is. Because the
point.
first thing you do is
Yep.
he would get his butt all the way back, right? And so his knees stayed over his feet. So that is a huge thing for sure. But talking about movement and posture, and Ben, I think, has seen this even in just like the first couple, short couple of weeks he's been here. We get kids come in for tryouts, and high school kids, Kevin, 16 years old, they get in the box, their posture's awful. Not their fault. They haven't been taught.
It's
fact, it's the opposite of their fault. They've been told to bend their knees. They bend their knees, they shrug their shoulders, right? And then you hear this. I've heard this a lot this summer with because we had a lot of, our older teams often have success, right? On the field. I hate that it's this way, but it's this way. They have success in the field. So that draws attention. People want to come and join those teams, right? So we get a lot of tryouts for those older kids. And we hear it a lot, hey, look, it's just, I've taken them as far as I can, and it's time to get serious about, we know it's time. Like we gotta, it's like, it's time. It was time 3 years ago,
Right.
like, thanks for coming here, 'cause this is going to give you his best shot. But like, we see that a lot. And we always start with, hey, look at your feet. This is where you should feel the pressure of your weight. Your hip should be back. And so I know Ben's seen it. And because of course, we all know this, that if you don't have the proper posture, if you can't move correctly, you're not going to be able to perform the motion. Which one? We're not going to be able to turn your belly button first.
Right.
You'll fall over. Right.
And I actually wrote a blog a couple of weeks ago. It's on my site about, everyone talks about posture, that it's a static thing, right? We're in line for military checkup.
Right.
I use this terminology of active posture. What does my posture look like when I'm doing my sport, my job, right? So I can stand at a dress and have my shoulders back and everything relaxed. Now I get in the batter's box and I'm shrugged, my knees are over my toes. So posture is a fluid thing, not just a static thing, right? So we have, and posture mechanics, you can switch that word out, but there's so many kids that I see now that, with the whole iPhone and like I said, no one's emulating David Ortiz out in the on the wiffle ball yard because they can just sit in their house and have David Ortiz on a 75 inch TV and play video games. They're not getting that. They're not learning how to move, and I think they're way behind. And what's happened is they're not learning how to move. Now we've introduced strength and conditioning. We've applied that block to a formula that's bad. And now that's a recipe for really bad. That's a recipe for one, these kids aren't getting better because they're not moving. They don't have the movement tools first before we then apply the skill and the strength and conditioning. And that's where I think the development falls very short.
Yeah, I agree. And it's this isn't just an opinion, of course. It's no coincidence, right? You and I have we share a client, and kid, we'll call him Q, right?
Call him Q. I like that.
Absolutely loves baseball more than anyone I've ever met in my life, and he watches baseball. And he probably plays baseball video games, and he watches video, like, little baseball videos, whether it's a clip from a game or it's some sort of drill, nonstop. Right. And so he gets these things really quickly, and you have to do that stuff. Like, it blows my mind that, and I don't know if you've seen this, Ben, but so many kids don't watch the game. They actually don't watch the game of baseball. And some will tell you, like, I don't like watching baseball. So they love to play it, but they don't watch it.
When I work at DBAT and I was hosting practices, I always gave them homework. Whatever the night game was that night was to either watch it or watch the College World Series, because kids at that age they love video games, and I don't know anything about video games. I'm so bad at all video games, so I don't even bother.
That helps you, I'm
But
sure.
but when I watch a game, I can see if I'm catching, I can see how catchers are setting up.
Yes.
I can see how pitchers are pitching. I can see, different, say what you want about the shift. I can see how different defenses are patterned to different hitters. You just see and you learn a lot about the game because I would say 100% of the time, the commentators of the game are always ex-big leaguers who will talk about their playing days and how the game's constantly changing or small things that they did. You just learn a lot when you watch baseball.
Right.
So, and I always told my younger teams, it's like, hey, you need to watch baseball. Like,
Yeah,
That's-
it's important.
We've had talks on this show about mental skills, and that's baseball is such a cerebral game, right? People don't understand that a blown strike call in the fifth inning or second inning, how that parlays into what happens in the fifth inning, right?
Sure.
One pitch here or there, and kids just aren't, and obviously the mental part is part of the development too. They're not getting that part. How many kids, Mike, we've coached at high levels. How many kids you say, hey, can you keep score? I don't know how to keep score.
Yeah, they don't have to do the book.
What? You play in
Yeah.
a Division I team. You play for Boston College. You don't know how to keep score?
ask a kid to number the positions on the field.
I don't know. What do you mean you don't know? Like,
Hey, go run to position. Like
you were drafted. I don't know how to
Yeah.
keep score. I don't know. Someone else did that. It's just insane. Like, but
No.
I think we're
All
gonna have
true.
to maybe
Tell me what a 6-4-3 double play is.
Right.
Yeah.
No idea.
we're severely up against the clock, so we probably, if we want to finish development, we'll have to hold our why would
All
you
right.
do that till the next, or we can add another show this weekend for sure. But so Mike, if you had to do it, or what would you do if you had a utopian development? Like, what are a couple key things that have to be in this? Like big concepts that have to be in there?
Okay, so we already talked about it. Posture, right? So getting a kid. So, and I say this all the time. We get a kid 13 or younger. I can almost guarantee that if they train with us, they'll play college baseball. Now, what level depends on a lot of things, right?
Right.
Genetics and how hard he trains and what he's doing
Yeah.
on his own.
But if a kid comes to you with relatively decent skills, you're gonna tell him he's gonna play in college. You're gonna get
even
him,
without
get him-
decent skills at 13, because we'll be able to teach them. So obviously, the younger the
That's good.
kid, the less, a kid comes in, even if he's 10, he's taken thousands of swings before you've ever met. All right. We got to undo that, plus teach him the new movement. A kid at 15 has taken hundreds of thousands and hundreds of thousands of swings.
Yep.
And so it's harder to get that muscle memory out. And again, starting with the basic, hey, we postural stuff. So that's 13, 14, depending. Now you have to have a bit of a baseline for us to get you even more so for 15 and 16. Right. So
Yep.
the ideal situation is we get a kid at like 10. 10's good because, 8 and younger, they can't even conceptualize these movements. So 9, 10 in that range. And the first thing is teach them the posture, teach them how to move. Like I said, your fluid posture, athletic posture. And then the next thing is teach, if there's nothing else, teach your kid how to rotate. Let them turn their hips first. Who cares what their hand path looks like at 11? Who gives a crap, right? If they can turn their hips, turn their back leg, that's all that matters. Hand path's easy to learn once they have that down, because that's the thing that I number one, I see if we get 1,000 kids in, doesn't matter the age, maybe one of them will rotate their hips before anything else. And it's just because they haven't
Good
done
point.
it. So that's what I would say.
All right, Ben, what do you got?
Yeah,
You
so
had a couple of good concepts that just have to be in there.
good concepts, man. I would say number one, you have to just teach the fact that more games does not equal better development.
That's great.
That's
More
huge.
games is not equal. I like that. That's good.
Just because your dad wants to see you play in the big leagues when you're 20 years old doesn't mean at 10 years old you need to be playing over 50 games. Like, it's ridiculous. I would say that watching sports is a great. I also would even encourage them to play multiple sports and teach athleticism and how to move properly. I think basketball is probably the sport that requires the most athleticism, maybe.
Yep.
with jumping, moving around, running. You know, play a few sports, learn to be athletic. But the number one thing is when it comes to developing, just don't overuse your body, because like me, I overused it, got hurt, and luckily I met Kevin and we fixed that. But if I had never met him, I probably would have got the surgery, and who knows what I would have done afterwards.
Good point.
So with that, you just each day you got to work hard, and you have to have goals, and you have to the reps, but the right reps. And we talk about in college that there's always this, hey, there's however many colleges, however many players in colleges out there that are working at the same goal, and you have to outwork them, but you have to work smarter, not harder. Because the harder you work, you're putting your body at risk for injury, for all of these things. But if you work smart and you're careful and you're not overusing your body, you can get the necessary gains you need without hurting yourself.
That's a good point.
What's good? How beneficial are you to your team if you're hurt, like Stanton, all the time?
That's a good point.
And I was going to throw one thing in there too that goes along the lines. It's just one small sentence is that you can't go out and just decide you're going to outplay somebody in any game, right? Because you don't know how you're going to play that day. It's not always it's not within your control, and you can't control the others. But you can always decide to outtrain somebody.
I would tell every one of my players to go watch the Michael Jordan documentary too.
Absolutely.
Learn the mindset of how he trained and how he was over to. I mean, he got cut from his team in high school.
He did.
Yep.
All right. So I will say for my end, it's this notebook right here, right? So when you pay for a strength and conditioning program, you're hiring a coach. This is not a coach. This is paper. So when you get a program that's just written on paper and they hand it to you, say, go do that. That's not coaching. Okay. It's not strength and conditioning. So Michael, Ben, you guys teach the why and the how. Why are we doing it? How are we doing it? What's the purpose of it? Don't get that from this. What you get from this is another piece of paper that says physical therapy referral, and then my name's on it, which is okay. I like the marketing. Okay. But so what I mean by that is if you're going to go to a program, make sure you are coached. Make sure there's someone there supervising, and not just supervising on their, lifeguard whistle sitting on a chair. Okay. Actually in there teaching the movement, why it's happening, what we're doing, what the purpose of it is, not the legal notepad. Anyone could print that off the internet and say, here's your strength and conditioning program. That's why kids are getting injured. They're not being coached and told how to move correctly, which is okay. I like the business, but I'm also good on the front end of the preventative stuff.
Right.
So that's what I would say to that.
Well said.
All right.
Well said. All right. I think we went over today. This is
I think we're a
long
little
show,
over. That's all right.
yeah.
That's all right. We haven't been on the Thursday.
Yeah.
Well. So again, if you guys subscribe to our YouTube channel at Prove It Live podcast, and then if you need to email the show, it's info@proveitlive.com. But we will be back. We'll hold off our why would you do that? We're gonna have a whole barrel of them by the time we do it again. And welcome, Ben.
Thank you.
Welcome, man. All
And
right, folks.
we will catch you guys next week for sure.
For number 80. Wow.
Yeah, for number 80, right?
Wow.
All right.
I expect a handsome then.
All right, absolutely. All right, guys, have a great week.